Hey everyone, before we get started on today's episode, I wanted to give a special shout out to Jay. Lil Javi, as some of y'all know him as, is the son of one of our board members here at Wildscape. He's currently fighting leukemia, and from what his dad tells me, he's kicking his ass. We originally wanted him to co-host the show with me today since the guest is actually a family friend, but, due to medical conflicts, we just couldn't make it happen. Jay, I wanted to let you know that you have the whole Wildscape team behind you, and I can't wait to have you record an episode with me, little man.
Wow. I'm an elephant, I'm a sexy duck. Only getting one, I'm a rhino, I'm a horny toad. Netherlands to Borneo. Planet Earth, we can't neglect it. Nature's sexy, we need this place, so please respect it.
Hey everyone, welcome to season 2 of Wild and Unprotected. We have a very special guest for the kickoff episode of this season. Everyone, meet Evan Tuohy, the co-founder of IslaMar Research Expeditions down in Puerto Rico.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Now, this one's particularly important to me. My family is from Puerto Rico. I've been wanting to do this for a while. One of our board members referred Evan over to me for the show. We've been trying to connect, and we finally made it happen. This one is really cool, near and dear to my heart. So, Evan, thanks for making the show.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for reaching out. We're definitely excited to do this, and you have a great organization, great thing going. So, we're definitely happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, appreciate it. It's a lot of hard work and a lot of time sitting here on a mic talking to people. So it could be a lot worse. It could be worse. I could be in the water 24/7, which I would like to do, but I got to admit, I'm sitting pretty on this side of things. Well, all right. So to kick us off, tell us a little bit about yourself, Evan.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm Evan Tuohy. I'm co-founder of IslaMar Research Expeditions. And basically, IslaMar is an entity my wife and I created in 2015. We moved down to Puerto Rico 13 years ago now. And I grew up in Florida. So I moved from Florida. My wife and I met in our undergraduate degree at Florida Tech in Melbourne, Florida. And then we made the decision to finish up our graduate degrees and get our PhDs from the University of Puerto Rico here in the Department of Marine Science. And during that time, we were still kind of working with some professors from our undergraduate degree who was bringing field courses of students down here, and he would hire us to basically lead those courses. And through that, we kind of realized hey, maybe we should start trying to do this and incorporate it at a little bit larger scale. And so we created IslaMar Research Expeditions, and basically we host and run field courses for undergraduate and graduate students who have an interest in tropical marine ecology, fish and corals. And we give them basically a crash course in what it's like to be a field marine scientist. From the point of developing a question, narrowing down your hypothesis, going and collecting the data, which is the fun part, but then analyzing the data and getting your results and your discussion. All of that we kind of do in-house and give, the up-and-coming prospective marine scientists kind of a taste of what it's like, everything in their toolbox to really make this happen. And it's really great. It's really fulfilling. It's evolved a lot in that time. I guess in almost 10 years now. And yeah, we're really happy doing it. It's been a great opportunity, and we look forward to the years to come and more expansion. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love programs that give back, kind of to the next generation. That's one of the reasons that, we started this show, was to encourage the next generation, kind of in quirky means. This isn't, your traditional conservation podcast where we really dive deep into kind of the science behind it. We want to tell, the real life stories, the wild stories, and things like that. So it's really cool to see a program that's really similarly driven in regards to working with students, working with that next generation, and seeing how it impacts them. How did you get into research and conservation? What was that path like?
Well, so we were lucky in the sense of even in our undergrad and our graduate degree, we had the opportunity to get out into the field, especially in our graduate degree, being here studying tropical marine ecology and biological oceanography for our PhDs, and being here in a Caribbean island and primarily working in a research station. We literally could go from the classroom, walk out of the classroom, walk to the dock, pick up a scuba tank, hop on a boat, and in 10 minutes we're completely immersed in it, diving on coral reefs, counting fish, working on projects. And so that really gave us an opportunity for a lot of different projects and kind of develop that whole research side of it. I said before, IslaMar, basically, we do the field courses, but that's only like part of what IslaMar is. We also apply and obtain our own funding for research projects that we do independently throughout the island. And we do that either just as IslaMar as ourselves, or we collaborate. We have a great network of other researchers here in Puerto Rico that really allows us to kind of have a more island-wide impact to really help bolster some of these research projects and some of these conservation components that we do. But yeah, it all kind of just given the opportunities, never saying no, during our undergraduate and graduate degree. And that just kind of allowed us, like, one project, you learn a new skill, you learn how to apply that to something else, you meet new contacts, it just kind of snowballs into one thing after another. And we're really fortunate to have those opportunities and kind of have the opportunity to continue that on and be here and live in an area where we can be in the field as much as we do and not have to travel to that. It's amazing.
Yeah, it sounds so horrible that, your backyard is the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean, living in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, definitely.
I think one of the points that you brought up there that I'd like to unpack a little more is kind of the funding portion of it. We don't get to talk a lot about conservation funding here. Mm-hmm. How did going through that that funding stage impact the early days of IslaMar?
Yeah, it's tough. Like, just to give you an idea, so we're independent scientists. So at IslaMar, it's the untraditional. Usually you get your PhD, you work in academia, you work for a big organization like NOAA, something like that. And based on, a lot of the opportunities and our experiences that as we were, throughout our graduate degree, we decided to stay and be an independent scientist. And what that means is we don't have a salary. We don't have a 401k. We don't have health benefits, that we're, a health package that we're paying into, so it's a hustle. We're constantly writing grants, whether that be for mostly federal funding from the U.S. and NOAA, because Puerto Rico is, a territory of the United States. So we can apply for United States government funding. But then also some local resources like the Department of Natural Resources here. And also we, have collaborated with some private entities as well. Some other companies that support our work, which is an amazing opportunity as well. But yeah, just to answer your question, it's a hustle. We're constantly writing. You constantly have ideas or proposals on deck that, you kind of have to tweak and flip in a short amount of time and get it out and to meet a deadline to be able to, acquire funding for the next year or 2 or 3 or 4 years of that. It takes a lot of time. It can be very frustrating, because nothing's guaranteed. You can spend tens, 20, hundreds of hours on a proposal and there's no guarantee that it's going to be funded. So if it doesn't get funded, you lose all that time. We don't get paid for it. So, we're constantly trying to evolve, constantly recycling some ideas, because it might be a good idea. It might be worthwhile, but hey, it might just not meet into that funding cycle or that funding entity's ideas, or they had 2 or 3 or 4 other really good ideas that they want to fund other than that. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was a bad idea or it was a crap proposal, So, we kind of just try to, evolve and it's, it's just a constant hustle. But it's more frustrating in the early days. I'm not saying it's not any less frustrating now because rejection is real and, it hurts a little bit, but especially, when you feel like, oh, this is, my heart and soul is going into this. And then, you get a bad reviewer and it burns sometimes. Sometimes you have to read a proposal, read the reviews and shut the computer and not look at it for a couple of weeks, because, it could be frustrating. But in the same sense, it's really fulfilling. It allows us to really diversify. We have to diversify our career paths and what we do. We can't just focus on one thing. It allows us to work with an amazing group of people, local researchers here on this island. And it also allows us to help support, students and citizens that would like to do the same and really want to, help out, especially, like you said, your family is here in Puerto Rico, but that's the one thing that, I love about being here and that I loved about, the local Puerto Ricans is they really do love their island, and they, and really, if you need help, they're always happy to help and everybody's super eager and, and it's great to be able to give back in that way, help support, the local resources, local people, and then local students as well and help, give back and give them opportunities as well. So, it's really fulfilling.
Yeah, a lot of how I explain that kind of thing to people is you really get paid in sunshine and love doing the kind of work that you're doing, especially independently, because it is not for the faint of heart at all, because there are some tough days when you're trying to get funding, you get that rejection. And the way I like to explain it to people when people ask me about, kind of the funding process with nonprofits, is I like to compare it to a product organization, like an Apple, like a Samsung or some type of organization that sells something. And you are constantly having to create the next thing, the next product to pitch, the next product to push out, because that's what garners interest from organizations, whether they're private, public, whatever it may be, to back your organization with funding, or the government itself. You are constantly having to be, looking forward just as much as you're looking at what you're doing. There's one foot constantly in the future, looking at the next project, the next grant, the next funding meeting, and then another foot is in the the current present day, looking at what we're trying to accomplish now to make sure that what we're doing is factual. In our case, creating the right content that's up to date, that's actually sending out the right message, and not pushing out something that's not factual anymore, or that's not impactful, and in your case, something that's not scientifically correct. So it's really interesting to try and explain that to people, and I'm really glad you hit on that.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about the student program. And one, how do you get students?
So generally we do it in a couple ways. So we've done some field courses here on the island that are just solely for local students. One of the things that's kind of interesting about Puerto Rico is you would think like, oh, being surrounded by water, it must be like a marine biology mecca. The university system here in Puerto Rico doesn't have an undergraduate degree program for marine sciences. The closest they have is like coastal marine ecosystem. So there's a lot of students that are, yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of local students here that are that's their dream, and it's a great dream to have, and like that was my dream, to be a marine biologist, but they don't really have the opportunity, even here, living on like a tropical marine island surrounded by the ocean. So a lot of times they have to either take, they have a great program for the coastal at the University Puerto Rico, Humacao, for the tropical marine or coastal marine ecosystem. So they have to take that for an undergrad, or they take general biology. So they're really, and then you can transition into, if you want to stay here in Puerto Rico, the Graduate Department of Marine Science in the University of Puerto Rico system. So they're really not getting the opportunity to have that like hands-on in the exposure to marine science until they make that decision to go to graduate school. So after having 4 or 5 years of undergraduate degree. So we started doing some field courses for local students. So we do that part of the time. But then we also partner with universities in the States as well, who bring students from the United States also. Because that's a big part too. They have the undergraduate programs, but they don't have the reefs. They don't have the tropical marine environment. So it's appealing for those students to come down and fully get a chance to immerse themselves in this environment to which they have to travel to. It's not their backyard. So, we either do, the local field courses, every other year, or every year we tend to partner with universities from the States as well, who bring students down here. So, that's more or less how we get the student base.
That's awesome. I love that you're double dipping, essentially, taking some of the locals that you can, that are in the position to be able to do that, but also utilizing, the universities in the States. I mean, I would assume, there's a lot of interest there, and that's probably where a lot of the money, I would assume, comes from too, to be able to put on a student program like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the reality of it there, to whereas like we're not affiliated with the university period. So for instance, when we do the local courses here, the cost is much different because one, just the pay scale here on the island is drastically different than what the pay scale is, and the amount of resources, monetarily and otherwise here that's available is much different than what's in the States. So the cost is different, but also too, when it's run through a university in the States, they're paying university tuition for the course. So they're paying, it's much more inflated for them. They're paying per credit hour like you would at a normal university. So, so the university likes it because they can, it helps them. It allows them to do that. But then, we kind of do have to double dip and have two almost separate programs just because just the reality of the matter and the different availability of resources from, the actual mainland United States at the time of year. And it's the best way that we could to make it work.
Yeah, well, I got nothing but respect for that. I feel like a lot of organizations don't like to face reality, and then on top of it, don't like to talk about it when it's an important piece of how they function. So I appreciate that. To keep us moving, what should the students expect who want to be a part of the program? What's the program like?
Yeah, that's kind of usually, that's a great question because everybody, like I think you have in the field, and especially your first time experience, everybody kind of sees like the National Geographic funded expeditions and opportunities and thinks it's this great, glorious, I'm going to be on a ship for 2-3 weeks straight. And, everything is super high funding and high paid and cozy and comfortable. And it's definitely not that. What we like to do.
You're on some shit dinghy that just left the worst dock ever.
Exactly. No, for real. Like, a lot of times we're on smaller boats, 20 foot or less boats, 25, 30 foot or less boats in the sun all day, rough conditions, beat up, bruised, waterlogged all day. And we like to do a lot of stuff. We're really fortunate. The area we live in, on the West Coast here, we can do a lot of things from shore, which cuts the cost a lot and it makes it a lot easier. So we can do a lot of shore dives as well and shore snorkeling. So I would, to expect it's going to be fast paced, long days in the water, in the sun, and we try to keep you moving and busy. You don't get a lot of downtime, which I think a lot of people are a little surprised with, but we like to, take advantage of the opportunity, get as much out of it as you can. We don't want to have you just sitting around. But, typically a day would start 7 in the morning. which is kind of late for us, but we got to realize they're students, so we got to give a little bit, but we, do, we'll do a quick recap of what we'll be getting in the water for. We get in the water, spend at least, I would prefer to spend, minimum 2-3 hours in the water nonstop. But that's, usually that's kind of hard for everybody, especially when you're doing that 4, 5, 6 days in a row. Snorkeling or diving, doing the monitoring work. Usually we typically try to do some coral reef or fish monitoring, do photo quadrats or some measurements of restored coral colonies. We'll do that for a couple hours, get out of the water, have lunch. And then typically we tend to go right in the classroom and start doing some lectures, analyzing the data, talk about different subjects we'll be introducing the next day. So yeah, it's pretty long, pretty fast paced. And, it's great, but we do see, we realize it is a lot more intense than what a lot of students think the marine biology program is, but that's the reality of it. It's small scale. This is what the majority of marine scientists are doing it all the time. It's small boats. It's work from shore. You're scraped, you're beat up, you're sunburnt, like all of that stuff is the reality. And if they're long days and you're tired, and that's what you can expect, but it's super fulfilling. You're going to see things you've never seen before, do things that you didn't even think you could do before. And that's one of my favorite things, and the most fulfilling part about the whole process is asking students what they think at the beginning and then seeing what they think at the end. And it's, it's amazing. It's great, and just to see, that students evolve the majority of the time is, oh, this is the best thing ever. We're totally going to do this as a career path. And that's great. And that's amazing. Like, that's what we want to see. But then the reality of it too is sometimes people are like, we hate this. This is not what we wanted to do. And that's fine. Like, I'm glad you were able to have that and make that choice now in the beginning of your career, not a couple years into it, because, it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's a great point to bring up, because most people, I feel like, don't get that opportunity to experience, almost like a marine biology boot camp. And they'll go through their graduate degree and they'll be excited. They'll go into their PhD program and they'll be like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do the rest of my life, and only have been on the water, a handful of times. And then they finish up that program and they're a year into it and they're like, what the fuck did I do? Did I make a mistake and gave up, 6 years of my life?
Yeah. I mean, like, think about it, like, seasickness is a real thing. And a lot of times you don't experience it until you're out there on the water, or you have no idea, or you're out in rough conditions, which the reality of is we're not out. You have to go out, when it's rough sometimes. And I have great friends, great colleagues that are amazing scientists that get seasick in rough conditions. And it's kind of one of those things, and you could hate it or you love it. So, the first time you get seasick, some people are like, this is not for me. Like, get me out of here. I'm not doing this anymore. Well, imagine being 5 years into a degree and then realizing that, but
exactly.
That could be make or break for some people. They could be absolutely miserable out there in the field and never want to do it again. So it's great to get that opportunity early on. And I mean, I don't want to deter anybody either, because that's the great thing about marine science is it's such a diverse field. Just because you might not be, you find out you might not like the field setting, doesn't mean there isn't 1,000 other paths you could do within marine science, or 1,000 other things that you could do that's still amazing and worthwhile and cutting edge, work that, blows my mind all the time, that doesn't involve being on a boat or in the field or, doing the dirty work.
Yep. I mean, just look at this conversation that we're having now. I mean, we both technically could say we're both in conservation in the same field, but, my end of things is essentially a media nonprofit business, which incorporates all the fields that you would learn in business. There's little to no science outside of making sure that we understand what's being talked about. I'm lucky because I do have a marine biology background, which allows me to hang in these conversations. But there's so many pathways within this line of work. So I'm glad you hit on that, because that is something that is, I feel like, so overlooked. There's people who could work in the finance segment of this. We need people that understand the numbers and how to make a business run, how to bring in money. We need
Right.
people who can create, educational content, but on top of, being able to work in science. So that is such an important point. And I am so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So for this next segment, I wanted to talk about IslaMar's coral projects. Can you tell me a little more about what you guys do with coral in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, so as I was saying, like, being independent, you have to really diversify, and it allows us to have a pretty wide range of expertise in areas that we work in. But like, for instance, my wife and I are, who started this company, started IslaMar, we're fish biologists, but we also do a lot of work in coral reef restoration. And so basically we have a couple projects with some great collaborators like Isla and HJR Reefscaping here on the island. And we work with these different entities to do restoration efforts to help restore degraded coral reefs around the island of Puerto Rico. And typically how we do that, the more like quote unquote traditional way of doing it is there's two ways really. You can do it by taking broken corals. So you can take like a big disturbance event, a ship grounding, a big hurricane, a big swell event, which we get here on the west coast of Puerto Rico that has a tendency to break some of the corals. And we go in after those disturbance events and we basically collect all those coral fragments. So coral reefs are living, corals are living organisms. Some of them have like branching growth forms and those branches can break. All right. And they break and they fall onto the reef. Naturally, those corals can re-cement themselves, so the organisms can actually re-cement themselves to the reef, and that little fragment then grows into a whole new coral, all right, and potentially helps regenerate the coral reef. But we all know coral reefs worldwide are now at basically like a turning point or potentially a tipping point where they need our help. So there's lots of great restoration work, not just here in Puerto Rico, but throughout the world that goes in, and we're basically helping those reefs regenerate themselves. And so what we do then is we take advantage of that natural process of fragmentation and re-cementation. We go and collect those fragments and we cement them using a hydraulic cement. Like it looks like normal cement that you would use to make a house or a sidewalk. And we basically put a little handful of that cement on the reef and press that coral fragment in there. And in 45 minutes to an hour, it's solidified. And then that basically makes the survival rate of those fragmented corals go much higher. So anywhere from naturally might be like 40 to 50%, depending on the area, to where it can be 80 to 90% with restoration intervention. So that's primarily what a lot of the work that we do here around the island. The other way would be taking coral nurseries. So there's in situ and land-based coral nurseries, which grow the coral fragments and grow corals in those nurseries. And you can actually take and break fragments off of those corals and then take them into either the nearby reef or into the water and re-cement them themselves. And, basically we're at a point where reefs need our help, corals need our help. And so we're basically taking that natural process and we're kind of just like giving it a nudge, basically we're able to get higher survival rates, and make it a lot more, worthwhile than what potentially could just be the natural process. We're taking advantage of that, but then also kind of like making it on steroids a little bit, getting it to go faster, more effective, more efficient.
That's awesome. And I don't think people understand the impact that the reefs have on a lot of the ecosystems around there. I mean, it's not only it's a home to, millions of fish, but also, it has impact on tourism. And I don't think people, see that. The surf breaks don't come from nowhere there.
Yeah.
And that is a really important part to me, along with, millions of other people that visit Puerto Rico. This is really important work. If you want to have those famous breaks off Rincón,
right,
we need this shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. That's what a lot of people don't realize. It's not just, corals don't just benefit other corals or coral reef inhabitants. it's much, much, much more than that. And it's crazy to think about it. Like, yeah, they create surf breaks. So if you think of it from like a tourism point of view, like here on the west coast of Puerto Rico, tourism is huge, especially surf tourism. So none of these waves would be here without coral reefs, you know? But it's not just that. Like, the island wouldn't be here without the coral reefs. The beaches, you know, even if you don't surf, the beach wouldn't, because they act as a natural barrier to break up wave energy and suppress erosion. So a lot of those $1 million beachfront properties wouldn't be there. The beaches wouldn't be there. It's a source for potential medical and pharmaceutical devices. Anybody who eats fish, I guarantee you there's, in one way, shape, or form, that fish is closely associated to a coral reef environment. So with not having coral reefs is going to significantly affect of what's on your plate as well. You know, so it's crazy to think about it. And I mean, everybody's heard about it. Oh, coral reefs are the rainforest of the sea. That's true. They are a biodiversity hotspot. You know, like a single coral reef supports tens of thousands of different organisms. So, and the corals themselves, they are the foundation of that whole ecosystem. If you remove the corals, so in the Caribbean, we have less than 100 species of corals. If you just remove, you know, and a lot of times we don't see all of them, you know, so there might be 12 different corals that make up a reef in a certain region, say. If you remove those corals, those 12 species, it's potentially impacting thousands of other species. You know, without the corals, we're not going to have any of it. And if you think of it even at a larger scale, like coral reefs in general, they make up less than 1% of the ocean surface, but they support up to 25% of all known life in the ocean. So it's crazy to think about, you know, the consequences of potentially losing that ecosystem. It's not just going to affect coral reefs or tropical marine ecosystem. It's going to have a global effect. And so, like, it's so important that these conservation efforts, and there's a lot of great restoration work that's going on, and has been for decades now. And, you know, it's, you know, we're really happy to be a part of it.
I know you guys have done a lot of work, and I think there's a particular process or project that you guys have worked on that's particularly interesting. It's actually how you were first introduced to me. Was this particular process? Tell me about your bottle process, and how a process involving glass bottles, in particularly, you know, I think it's a good place to say this is for all our beer drinkers out there. You guys can very much help our coral reefs with this process. What is that process?
Yeah, so basically, and that's one of the things, being able to apply for our own funding and do that, it lets us kind of branch out and do some more unorthodox projects. And this was definitely one of them. So yeah, we were all kind of just sitting around, throwing around, which is, you know, a huge part of the collaborative process. We sit around in groups sometimes, and try to think about the next idea, the next RFP or call for proposals, and think of different tweaks and interesting spins that we could take on it. And this one was, you know, we use cement to restore corals, but the process of making cement is fairly bad to not just the coral reef, but the island environment itself. If you've ever seen, like, you know, mining of sand using for cement, like, it's pretty degrading to the island itself, which in turn creates more erosion, which ends up in the water, which then hurts coral reefs. So what we wanted to do was come up with a way to, like, how do we reduce some of our dependency? And by far the restoration efforts far exceed, you know, like what's going on with any of that process of using the cement. But we wanted to say, okay, well, how can we reduce our dependency on some of the more harmful aspects of what we're doing? And we had the idea, we were sitting around drinking beers one afternoon and being like, well, hey, big part of what they're doing for cement is sand, and this beer bottle, all glass is made of sand. Is there a way that we could incorporate glass made from sand into some of the mixture to reduce our dependency on that mined sand that they use in cement? And, with some research and contacts from other collaborators and friends, we were put in touch with a company in New Zealand who makes a glass bottle crushing machine, and not just large scale, huge industrial ones, but this is a portable, semi-portable one that we can kind of bring around to sites or use in our offices and, at home. And basically it takes the glass bottle and pulverizes it back into sand. And, for anybody who doesn't know, like, all glass is made from sand. They basically take sand and melt it down, and then you can form it into the, because glass is considered a liquid. And basically you're able to melt it and form it into a vessel, to hold water, beer, anything that you could think of. And so, we wanted to kind of like, okay, well, that's it. Let's see, how we can incorporate some of this and into, some of the restoration work. And, it also, we're on an island, there's limited space, and it not just reduces our dependency on mined sand, but it reduces the volume of things that are going into the landfill here on the island as well. So it was kind of just like a great positive thing that we were like, hey, let's do this, let's see if we can do it. And we had some great support. With this, we actually reached out to a local beer company in Madaya here on the island, which, is huge. Anybody who's been to Puerto Rico knows Madaya. It's the local beer company. It's the largest beer company here on the island. And they were like so hugely supportive. Like, and I'll give you an idea of, kind of bring this full scale. We originally applied for this project because we're scientists. So we didn't just want to go and say, hey, we're just going to throw a bunch of this glass sand into the cement, and then that's going to be it. Like, we're scientists. We developed the project to see exactly how much of that RGS, recycled glass sand, we could put into the cement mixture to achieve the same results. So we didn't want to do anything harmful to the environment. So we developed that project, applied for some funding for that from a call for proposals, and we were denied. That's just part of the process. There were lots of other great proposals that beat us out for that call for the project. But we had reached out to Madaya to ask just, hey, where does your sand come from? Where do you get the sand to make your bottles? Because that was important to the whole process. And they were so amped on the project that they kept, even before we're like, oh, what can we do to help? What can we do to help? And we were like, well, hold on. Let's see the outcome of our proposal that we submitted before, we really say what we need or what we don't need. And after 6 or 8 months, we got the rejection notice, and we reached out to Madaya, and they were like, doesn't matter. What do you need? We'll fund this project. We want to do it. We want to do what's best, and try to reduce our impact from our company, and help sustain some of the important resources on the island. And they supported a whole year of the project. We were able to go out and do our experiment, just like we got, scientific funding to do it. And they also had like a huge social media component, did videos. They got Pedro Capo to come out. And he was a part of the video as well, and got to help with the restoration. And it was like an amazing experience. It's definitely, us and our other collaborator, HJR Rescaping, we were all out of our element because we're just used to going out and diving and then having to go do the video stuff as well. It was a trip for sure. But yeah, so that's turned into, sorry, I'm rambling, but that turned into, going out, and now we're incorporating these beer bottles into the cement that we use to cement the corals back to the reef. So, it's a cool process for sure.
That is so awesome. I mean, just the innovation that spurred from that. You think about it, it all started from, knocking back a couple cold ones, and, probably sitting in a circle, shooting the shit, trying to figure out what ideas might work, could lead to something so innovative and so impactful on so many different work streams. I mean, you're helping with overall erosion and restoration of, someplace that is a home to me, one of the most beautiful islands, I think, in the world. Probably a lot of bias there. You're helping the reefs. You're helping, not not overfill landfills, because a lot of beer is consumed on the islands of Puerto Rico. A lot of it. So I mean, it impacts so many different streams. I, for one, am super appreciative, and that is just so damn cool. So I don't care about the rambling. That's just cool in general. And I think it's something, that can attract, different audiences to this line of work. I mean, how many people can you go up to now and be like, you know what? No matter where you are in the States, if you're on the West Coast, you can go up to someone and be like, hey, drink this Corona, and this could be helpful to the environment. And the looks you would probably get on people's faces, like, what? Yeah, I'm gonna drink this beer for coral reefs, and you're like, yes, you need to down it now, and they would be so stoked that that's how they can help the environment, is drinking beer.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, there's so many other uses to it. Like, if you think of all the stuff that cement is used for, especially like here in Puerto Rico, like the majority of the homes are built with cement. Like, walk around and look at how much cement is used, around you on a daily basis. Like what we do for restoration events, that's just a drop in the bucket for the overall large scale potential and the scaling up of this as a recycling process, So, it's got a huge potential, especially here in areas where space and resources are limited. It just, innovation and projects like that, are just so important.
Yeah, I agree. And I also, I think it's funny, looking back on what we've done on this show so far. So now we have, in regards to coral restoration, we have the use of glass bottles. And of course, we want to push that towards beer bottles, for coral restoration. And we have dead family member ashes, that have been used for coral restoration. So this show is off to a hell of a start in regards to coral restoration and how we continue to innovate there.
Yeah. And one of our collaborators, he's done that in the past for memorials for some of our colleagues, and generations before us in the marine science field here in Puerto Rico. He's made little kind of either statues or relics under the water where you've incorporated their ashes into the actual artificial reef. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Pretty cool. Well, I feel like that is a good time for us to dive into our favorite segment of the show. And I know you got a couple of pieces for this segment, the Wild Stories segment. So what do you have to kick us off with that one?
Oh, man. Yeah, like, we're in the field a lot. So, there's a lot of funny and wild things. The majority of our work, there's a lot of it's computer-based behind the scenes, but we're really fortunate, and we do a lot of diving. And we're in the field a lot. So, everybody kind of thinks about, they have an idea of, diving and working in the field. And it's not always being chased by sharks. It's not always, that, even though that does happen, that's not the reality. 99.9% of the time, it's completely, benign, safe. And, but then sometimes some hairy things do happen. So yeah, like some Wild Stories is one of the methodologies that we kind of help develop and advance that, I did some of my graduate work with was developing a form of in situ tagging for fish using closed circuit rebreathers. So closed circuit rebreathers, I'm not going to get super crazy into it, but it's different than what you would think of normal diving. So if you see a scuba diver, you exhale and you lose the bubbles go out into the environment. Basically, this is more or less what the astronauts use when they're doing their spacewalks. It recycles our gas, analyzes it for depleted oxygen, and then redelivers a fresh breath of air for us that's the right oxygen concentration for the depth that we're at. So it's really like advanced technology to use. And what it does is allows us to dive deeper. So we do a lot of work in fish spawning aggregation, so reproductive events of a lot of the commercially important species that everybody knows, like snapper and grouper. And so part of that, a lot of the work is really important, is monitoring their movements in relation to those reproductive events. And so what we did was we helped develop or help advance a way of in situ tagging, which has been done in the past. A lot of it's been done in Florida, but at shallower depths. But our aggregations typically tend to occur a little bit deeper in like the 150 to 160 foot range. And so we needed to use those closed circuit rebreathers to help insert acoustic tags into the fish that we were tracking. And so, the site that we dive is pretty crazy. It's a seamount in the middle of the Mona Channel, which is off the west coast of Puerto Rico. And you can think of it's like a mountain that rises up from the ocean floor, and that's in the middle of the Mona Channel, and the Mona, which is known for really strong currents. So you basically have basically all huge volume of water hitting a mountain and being diverted left, right, up, down, all over the place. And so, besides the inherent danger or potential for danger of doing surgical operations of fish underwater, seeing sharks and eels coming up to you and being attracted to what you're doing to the fish, cutting them open and stitching them back up. But, being caught in some of the downwellings on a rebreather, we have this big backpack on our back, bailout tanks on our sides, and it's really important as you're coming up and down that you maintain for the decompressions the depth for certain periods of time. You can't just be at the bottom at 160 feet and then come up. Sometimes we have an hour of decompression or longer. And so coming off of that seamount, getting caught in those downwellings, you can be in 120 feet of water kicking your butt off, and you just look and you're losing ground. You're getting pulled deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and you're just like, like this is not good, especially on a rebreather. And so that was kind of hairy. And then the same thing being caught in upwellings, because we have decompression, we can't come up too fast. So the exact opposite happens. We're sitting here with all this equipment on. You have to stay at a certain depth for a certain amount of time. You can't exceed that depth, or you could get the bends, decompression sickness. And then the next thing you know, you go from being ripped down, kicking as hard as you can for a couple minutes trying to get out of the downwelling. Then you hit the upwelling, and it's doing the exact opposite, trying to push you up to the surface as hard as it can. So it gets pretty hairy. It's been crazy. And then seeing, some sharks down there, which sharks normally never bother us. We're not fishing, more or less we're in their environment. I have the utmost respect for sharks, but there's been times where we were doing that tagging, and then we have one of our divers who just safety diver watching everything, and I hear her being like, "Tiburon," and I look up as I have this fish upside down, and I'm implanting a tag into an incision, and there's a 6 foot shark swimming directly at us, and we're just like, like please turn, please turn, please turn. And at the last minute it does turn. So that was kind of pretty scary. But the other probably one that would just be the shallow water diving experience would be my wife and I. We were collecting fish for another project in La Paguera on the south coast of Puerto Rico. And we both of us got caught in the middle of a mating group of manatees. So that's always a story that, is kind of embarrassing, but everybody gets a kick out of it, because it's so unorthodox. Not many people can say that. And so basically when manatees mate, it's generally one female or two females and a whole group of males, 10 to 12 to 20 or 30 males. And we were, collecting the fish that we needed to collect. And I turn around because I hear, and we were in like 50, 60 feet of water, down on the reef slope. And I hear my wife scream like, get away, get away. And I turn and I just see this manatee coming right at her. And I so we grab each other and we kind of push it off. I had the blunt end of a pole spear, not the pointed end, the blunt end. And I kind of just pushed it up against the manatee's nose to redirect it. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, that just happened. That was one. That was a fluke thing. Let's continue the job. Let's do what we're doing. And then the next thing I know, again, it happened 2 minutes later. It comes, and it wasn't just one or two. It was multiple. We're like, what the heck is going on? And we have these manatees basically rushing towards us, and I don't know if they just got caught up in the moment or felt threatened because, they thought we were trying to go after their female, or if they were just like, hey, get away from us, being aggressive. They didn't hurt us or anything, but it's kind of scary. They're big, strong, they are gentle giants, but, they're heavy, strong organisms, and so, we were like, crap. So we started making, we're getting charged by a group of male manatees, and they, would come and they'd go away for a little bit. We're like, all right, let's get back to the boat, and so we start making our way back to the boat, kicking, and boom, they show up again, 12 different manatees. We have to stop, get down close to the reef, kind of hunker down, and then they pass. We finally make it to the anchor line. We go up. We have to do our safety stop on the close to where the boat is. And I look, and no joke, where's the group of manatees? Around the boat, so we couldn't even get to the boat. So we had to wait till they leave, to get back to the boat, go up the anchor line, throw all of our equipment in the boat, get in the boat, and then finally it's like, okay, we're safe, And so yeah, that was definitely an interesting kind of hairy experience, was getting involved in the group of manatees. And the funny thing was because not a lot of people have ever experienced that, thank God. Like, I do not highly recommend that experience at all. But a lot of our friends and colleagues that are experts in marine mammals were like, you need to write down and publish that account, because you have some really good information that really could help the scientific community, because not that many people have been able to make those observations before. And so, yeah, we did have to publish, not have to, we were happy to do it, but it wasn't the most, glorifying experience to have kind of in print, but, it was, good experience overall. Needless to say, my wife hates manatees. Like, this isn't her first bad experience that we've had together with them, but, that was her last. She doesn't want anything to do with them. Not happy to see them, doesn't want to be in the water with them. It's just like, get me away.
Understandable. I mean, it sounds like the moral of the story is don't walk in on a manatee gangbang.
Yeah, exactly.
It might not end well. Oh my goodness, that is that's a hell of a way to start our season of wild stories.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but it's that was by far one of the more out there and crazy experiences that we've had, for sure.
I would say that's pretty high up on the list of what I've heard. Could you imagine if you did really document that and submit that to some of the research studies out in Florida, and it blows up and you get famous because you just happen to swim by manatees that were mating?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, shit.
It's pretty crazy, something that I will remember for the rest of our life. So,
I could imagine. Well, I think that is a hell of a way for us to start to wrap up this episode and talk a little bit more about your organization and how people can get involved and really send some support your way.
Yeah. So, we're really fortunate. Like I said, it's IslaMar Research Expeditions started just basically an idea, my wife and I had, and for the longest time we were just running it out of our house, and it's still really small scale. We're branching out, all the time and growing organically over the past 9-10 years, which we're super fortunate. We have, an amazing group of contractors that help us with our diving, our projects and research projects. We have, interns, all of our projects, because it's so important that we support, the local communities. We always try to create some type of community outreach to bridge that gap between the scientific realm and the public. So they really are able to digest the work and the importance of the work that we're doing. And we always try to incorporate funding for interns to help have volunteers as much as we can, but also pay prospective students for their time, because, the work that they're doing is so great. And so, if we can help out any way that we can, And we try to every year and every other year as we can, we develop a seed fund to support graduate students in marine science to help support their research that they're doing, because funding as a student can be hard to come by. So yeah, any way that we can help. We're about to become officially a 501c3 non for profit. And yeah, it's great. So we'll anything, if you want to donate to any of these programs. We also have a youth program too. The past year and a half, we started a youth program with our youth program coordinator, Leslie Wade. And that's really taken off. And what we're doing is teaching marine science and sustainability and conservation to young students, the next generation, that basically from ages 6 up to 12 and 13. And they're taking, semester long after school programs to where, they're fully immersed in tropical marine science and conservation here on the island and sustainability and learning about it for their age group, which is great because that's so important. And we're able to support the tuition for those students as well, to help pay for some of the overhead of those programs as well. So all of that's amazing. But not even that, I would say, helping what you could do to help the oceans in general starts at home, and it's not just helping IslaMar. It's not just helping me, Evan, or anybody else we're affiliated to, or the researchers worldwide. It's basically all you can do things at home that you don't even think about throughout the day. Like just being a responsible consumer, knowing where your food comes from, knowing if it comes from a sustainable source, if it's, not just if it's seafood, if it's, products that are grown with less pesticides or environmentally friendly pesticides, or that are not doing it in a way that's harmful to the surrounding environment, that promote erosion, which could then decrease water quality in the oceans. Limiting the amount of petroleum gas you're using, limiting the amount of the petroleum products that you use, like plastic bags, things of that nature. All of that is, as a planet, everything is connected. So your actions, your upstream actions, your actions on land definitely affect the downstream environment. And the ultimate downstream environment is the ocean. So all of the actions that you're doing, even if you live 500 miles from the nearest ocean, you have an impact. So think about, things that you're doing with petroleum, things that you're doing with plastics, all of those things have an impact on the environment. And, if you could just be more conscious, a more conscious consumer, and think about that and try to limit just in tiny, I'm not saying go plastic free. That's super hard. And the people who can do that have my 100% admiration, but not everybody can do that. But just be a little bit more conscious, try to limit it, ride a bike, for a little once a week, or, anything like that. If everybody as the masses grouped together and kind of took that mentality, we would have in the next generation would be a huge, huge, huge environmental impact to the good. That wouldn't just help marine scientists, but it would help everybody. So, I would say, definitely reaching out, volunteering at organizations like IslaMar. If you have the financial means to donate to, nonprofits or organizations that are doing good in your area or other areas that you might be interested in, that's amazing. Please do that. But there's little things at home that you could do that, is going to help everybody, and just, try to just be a little bit more conscious for that conservation and sustainability minded, and it will, leaps and bounds better for us and our next generations, because we're leaving this planet to the next generation. So we do have the responsibility to kind of not leave it better than how we inherited it,
Yeah. I don't think I think you wrapped that up perfectly. I don't think I could have said it better yourself or myself. I just say clean your room.
Yeah, clean your room.
That's it.
Exactly.
Clean your room.
Yeah.
You're taught it as a little kid. Clean your room.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
Yeah,
you do it perfect. As a little kid, you could do it as an adult.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Clean your room. I love that.
All right, Evan, that was an amazing episode. I appreciate your time today and everything that you do when it comes to, your innovative practices, when it comes to, bottle use, all that you do for the island of Puerto Rico. That means a lot to me. That hits me, straight in the heart. I really appreciate it. And I'm so damn excited that we got to finally record this. This was a good one. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for putting up with my schedule. It's pretty erratic. If the weather's good, we're out in the water. But and thank you. Like I want to
That's the conservation life.
Yeah, for sure it is. It is. But thank you very much for this opportunity, and you're fulfilling like an amazing role because as I said, the science it's not easily digested to the public, so we need like what you're doing is amazing. And reaching out to organizations like us and giving us a chance to kind of just nonchalantly talk about what we do and what we love and the importance of it. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, and this is the fun part, when I get to tell people, what have you, kind of dedicated your life to. It's telling digestible and humanizing stories about whale poop. People tend to give me, a funny look, but it gives a platform, and I'm incredibly humbled that I've been able to work with some of the organizations that I've been able to work with over the last year and a half since we really started this. And it's only looking up. I mean, there's some really, really fun stuff we got planned for not only wild and unprotected, but wildscape as a whole. So I really appreciate you highlighting that. And it's going to be a damn good season. And this is just a hell of a way to kick it off.
Yeah. Awesome. Looking forward to it.
All right. I think that's a good place to wrap the episode. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
See you guys later. Thanks.